Welcome to Waking Up Tired, Narcolepsy Symptoms Explained, a limited podcast series giving voice to what narcolepsy symptoms are like from a patient's perspective. I'm your host, Spillane. In today's episode, we're exploring one of the most frightening and misunderstood symptoms of narcolepsy, sleep paralysis. Sleep paralysis happens when your brain wakes up before your body does. You're conscious but frozen. You can't move or speak, and sometimes you're not alone. Many people also experience hallucinations during these episodes. Sounds, shadows, even voices. It's terrifying. And for people with narcolepsy, it can happen often. Today, Erin joins us to share her story. Erin was just 16 when her symptoms began. What started out as a strange, unsettling dream turned out to be something much more serious. Erin's experience of sleep paralysis helped shine a light on what so many people go through in silence. Meet Erin.
My name is Erin and I have type 1 narcolepsy. I was 16 when I first started experiencing symptoms of narcolepsy, and I was 18 when I was finally diagnosed with type 1 narcolepsy. I first started experiencing sleep paralysis when I was around 16. My first experience with sleep paralysis was a auditory type of paralysis. So I heard who I thought to be my dad come up to my bedroom door whilst I was sleeping and just say my name, Erin. I couldn't turn to see him. I could only know and hear that he was there, but I physically couldn't move to be able to see him. And it was a really scary feeling of knowing someone was there, who I at the time thought was my dad, but not being able to move to turn to see them, which would be the natural response to do if that happened to anyone else. The next day I came down and I asked him, did you come into my room at some point? Did you say my name at some point last night? And he said no. I didn't come anywhere upstairs to speak to you or anything like that. And that's the start of me trying to figure out what it was I was experiencing, because at the time I just thought it was a really odd, bad dream. And it was just something that perhaps had come from the dream. For me, my sleep paralysis comes more in the form of a feeling of being frozen. I don't necessarily see things. I don't necessarily always hear something. The majority of the time, there's this state of being stuck in between, this limbo of I want to move and I want to wake myself up, but I can't. And it's really hard to explain to people because people almost find it quite interesting. They find it really exciting sometimes that there's this idea that you can be like in the sleep paralysis and experience other worldly things, as some people feel that they can see things or they hear things. But for me, it's actually a really uncomfortable feeling. I like to explain it to people as a lot of normal people, when they trip in a dream, they fall and they wake themselves up. For me, it's that feeling that I'm falling, but I can't jump or trip myself up and wake myself up. So I'm constantly feeling that fear of falling or fear of that being stuck, but I can't wake up from that bad dream. Stuck between this consciousness and unconsciousness. And it is a really, really odd, bizarre feeling when you're 16 and really unsure of what is going on in your body. It's more when I'm falling asleep, I tend to get it. The beginning of my sleep cycle, I'm such a light sleeper. Anything can interfere with me falling asleep. And if something takes the attention of my brain away from the idea of going to sleep, there's like this battle between wanting to stay awake and wanting to go to sleep. And my body is kind of caught in between. I'm lucky now that I have a partner who can help wake me up. But obviously when I was younger, I had to ride it out or my body would naturally come out of it. Now I do tend to twitch when I'm feeling it, because I'm trying to fight against my body to wake myself up in the smallest way. And he can usually tell by the twitching that I'm doing that I'm having this battle, and he's usually able to bring me out of it pretty fast, which is so much better than what I used to have to do, whereas I was just uncomfortable and stuck and unable to pull myself out of it myself. Now I'm on more of a controlled medication and more of a stable medication. I tend not to experience it so much. When I first started having these experiences, I was experiencing a lot more auditory, just a sound or a sound of a person. It's not necessarily someone I know, it's just a noise and I know there's someone there, but I cannot physically turn to see who it is or turn to see what it is that I'm feeling. When you're younger, a really awful feeling of not knowing who or what is there. And as someone who obviously was already struggling with my sleep cycle, having these episodes of You go into sleep and then you go through the sleep paralysis period and then you wake up. You don't want to go back to sleep straight away. And I actually went through a period of time of, after having some of the sleep paralysis episodes, I had to have a light on. I had to have my phone torch on because I was terrified to go back to sleep and then feel this sensation and not be able to move, but also not have any light to see anything in general. So I felt like I had to sleep with a light on after some of the episodes because I was just so anxious about going back to sleep. And then at that point, it just becomes a bit of a vicious cycle because you're already tired and you want to go to sleep, but it feels like your body's fighting you to go to sleep. And then it just repeats, and there's just this cycle of tiredness and tiredness and tiredness. And it only makes those sleep paralysis episodes worse then as well. I got diagnosed in my very final few weeks of school. I was going through my exams and trying to obviously navigate school life and exams and revision and things like that, and just going through this period of just constantly being tired, but also not understanding why I'm always so tired as well. It was very frustrating and also quite hard to explain to people what I was going through. I had this last night. Have you ever experienced this? And they just think, oh, it was just a bad dream, and they don't quite understand on what level your bad dream is. Difficult and quite frustrating to explain to people. And it's the same with my parents. When I was first experiencing these episodes, trying to explain to them what I was actually experiencing was really difficult to put into words. And so I think that's why this idea of the dream that most people have when they're falling and they wake themselves up, the kind of feeling that you actually experience, that is the best way I can put into words. Just stuck in between the dream and knowing I'm not dreaming, but not being able to do anything about it. At that point, in my 16 to 18, I was just so tired all the time that when I was going to sleep, I was just literally straight out of it. My parents just constantly telling me I need to go to bed earlier, that I was on my phone too often. I just couldn't explain to them that I just can't stay awake. I'd go in a car ride for about 10 minutes and I'd be out like a light. There was just absolutely nothing I could do to control it. And it was, really frustrating when you don't know why you're tired all the time. I had a family member. We went away on like a girls' weekend, and the family member was talking about her daughter and her diagnosis. And initially I didn't really hear her diagnosis, that she had narcolepsy, but she was talking about her symptoms and the reason why she reached out for help. And she was talking about her cataplexy and the things that she experiences, so the droopiness when she laughs and things like that. But she was also talking about her experience with the sleep paralysis when she's coming out of her sleep. Those specific things I turned to because that is exactly what I was experiencing, and I'd never heard anyone put it into words before and give it a name. And I'd heard of narcolepsy before 1 or 2 times when I was younger, and it had never really been something I thought of. I don't know, it came over me and I was like, well, that sounds really familiar to what I'm experiencing. And I said to her mum, and I was, I've experienced quite a lot of that. And she said, I know it can somewhat run in the family. I don't know how it works, but if you're experiencing a lot of those symptoms, you should probably go see someone. Unfortunately for me, it was peak COVID. So I went to see a doctor who was very, very good. It was probably around the 3rd time I'd seen a doctor around my symptoms. The first time they told me I had SAD, seasonal affective disorder. So they told me I needed to get a light lamp and get more sleep and not stress so much. The second time they sent me to see a counsellor. And then the 3rd time I went back and I said, I think I have this condition. I think I have narcolepsy. And the GP was like, okay, great, we'll do your vitals and stuff like that. I can't really help you with it, so I don't really know anything about narcolepsy. And I think that's kind of where I started to realise how little people knew about it. She actually had to look up on the system what narcolepsy was. She was a bit like me, she'd heard of it, but she didn't really know much about it. And then she referred me to a neurologist, and it took me 8 months until I finally saw the neurologist. I had to go back to the GP because I told them I was scared to drive because I was experiencing more and more symptoms and I was experiencing more and more tiredness when I was driving, to the point where I was becoming a bit more fearful to drive because I had no way of controlling it at that point. I didn't know how often I was going to experience the symptoms. I didn't know how to manage my driving and whatever it was I felt that I was experiencing. Finally, 8 months later, I saw a neurologist who did the Epworth Sleepiness Scale. He also did something that I know a lot of people don't get, I had a lumbar puncture to measure my orexin levels, and when the test results came back, it came back that I had basically no levels of orexin, like 0 to maybe the tiniest amount, but hardly anything there. And I came out of that neurology appointment and I just cried. I called my mum and I just cried because I felt like this relief that there was nothing wrong with me. I just had something that I could get medication that would help me. I've always been very active. I've done dance, I did netball. In school, I've never really stayed still. And so it was really difficult for me to be able to try and do the things I wanted to do and do the things I love. So the modafinil was the start of me discovering what I could do to help, and also discovering the narcolepsy community as well. Talking to people about the things I'm experiencing and discover things that help and things that can help me cope with it as well as medication. When I was diagnosed, I actually wasn't really given any information. I've given a little leaflet, if that, but other than that, I was given my prescription and told that that was that, really. To find out information, I had to do it all by myself, really, and that's the only way I've discovered more information on the condition and how I discovered the community and how I discovered other people have the same condition as me. The most useful information I've found has been on the Facebook groups. There's a really amazing community online of people from all over Australia, but also there's international groups as well who give you an insight into other countries' research and their understanding. And I'm originally from the UK, so coming to Australia with this condition, I was really, really worried about getting my medication. So I joined the Australian narcolepsy group to get an insight into how accessible modafinil is. How much is it likely to cost? At home, I get it for free, but over here, I know there's a cost. My first year here, I actually spent about 8 months paying full price for my modafinil every month until I got in contact with a sleep specialist over here in Perth. And he told me I could apply for it to have it on Medicare. And I'd spent 8 months paying full price for it, not knowing. And as a traveller who was not getting a whole lot of income and paying my way, and to know that I could have been paying like a tenth of that price this whole time. And I just couldn't understand how no one, not the GP who I'd gone to see to get the prescription, not the chemist, no one seemed to have had that knowledge for me. That was quite frustrating, but the group has been really good in helping me find a sleep specialist here, and also just general advice on medication before I came out here, because I was really, really worried about how easy it would be to get. And obviously it's something that I can't really live without, and I can't really function normally without either. I think we all think the same thing, really, when you don't really know what it is. For me, the first time I saw some sort of depiction of narcolepsy, it was on an American TV show, and it was this character an astronaut who fell asleep all the time, which is obviously ridiculous and the most extreme scenario. This idea that it was somebody who they're always falling asleep during conversations, and people ask me the exact same thing. I tell them I have narcolepsy and they go, "Do you fall asleep during conversation then?" And I'm like, is that still what we believe that is? The first real depiction I had of narcolepsy was a lady called Belle Hutt, and I know she's got a bit of social fame now, but when I was younger, she did like a documentary for the BBC or something, I believe, and it was about her life with narcolepsy. And it was probably a tiny little documentary that I just happened to see on TV. I didn't think anything of it. I thought it was really interesting, but it had no relevancy to me. And then years later, 16, 17, I'm going through this diagnosis, and I found her again on Instagram. And I just thought, wow, I saw this all these years ago, and now actually this person is really relevant to me. I'm glad that I saw that video of her, a real life depiction of somebody who is struggling with narcolepsy, who is living a normal life, who doesn't fall asleep mid-conversations, but she does struggle with the normal narcolepsy symptoms. In the UK, narcolepsy is a neurological condition. That is what it's classed as. And so coming over here, I was told I had to go see the respiratory clinic. How is that interlinked? I can understand some other sleep conditions are interlinked with your breathing and things, but narcolepsy, if anything, it's a neurological condition because it's to do with the chemicals in your brain with type 1. And so when I first went to the Perth hospital to see about my modafinil prescription, the first doctor I actually saw had to go out and get the head of the department to come in and talk to me. And I just thought, wow, because this doctor knew what I was coming here for. He knew my condition and what the reason was, but still doesn't seem to have enough information to be able to consult. The head of the department is who I'm now under, and he's absolutely an incredible doctor, and he has multiple patients with narcolepsy, and it's really nice to have someone who A, knows about the condition, but B, is also up to date with new medications that are in testing, and actually goes out of his way in my appointments to tell me about new updates. So it's really refreshing, and it's probably the first time ever any doctors that I've ever been to over the time that I've been diagnosed who wanted to engage on the topic and give me insight into the medical updates and ongoing trials and things like that, which is really nice.
Thank you, Erin. Erin's story will resonate with so many people who felt that same fear and those who have felt the frustration of not being believed. Sleep paralysis isn't just a spooky story. It's a neurological event. And for people with narcolepsy, it's one of many symptoms that can disrupt daily life and emotional well-being. If you're listening and you've ever woken up unable to move or felt like your dreams were bleeding into waking life, then please speak to your doctor. Keep asking questions and don't stop until you're heard. This podcast series exists to raise awareness, foster understanding, and help others find the diagnosis and support they deserve, sooner, not later. Join us next time as we continue exploring narcolepsy through real voices and lived experiences. Thanks for listening to Waking Up Tired.